The digestive system is also known as the gastrointestinal or GI system. It serves to receive, process, and eliminate anything that comes through our mouth that we swallow. There are several regions of the digestive system, each with its own unique characteristics in terms of anatomy and function. Food is ingested or brought into the body, chewed up, and chemically altered with the aid of many secreted substances along the way. Food is broken down to the basic elements to be absorbed, and anything left over that can't be absorbed is allowed to leave the body, in addition to liver-generated waste that is dumped into the GI tract to also be eliminated from the body. All of this happens within a basic tube that starts at the mouth and exits at the anus. When the skin is cut to open the abdominal cavities, there are a few features you will see first before seeing any of the organs inside. Just under the skin and abdominal muscles, there is a membrane that is about as thick as saran wrap called the parietal peritoneum. It is a serous membrane that has two parts. One part surrounding the organs and lining the abdominal cavity, and one part adhered to the surface of the abdominal organs called the visceral peritoneum. The portion of the peritoneum that extends from the back wall of the abdominal cavity to the organs and intestines is called the mesentery. It contains vessels and lymphatics laminated between two peritoneal layers. Immediately under the parietal peritoneum, the intestines are still not visible. They are covered by a sheet of connective tissue embedded with fat, called an omentum. The greater omentum hangs from the greater curvature of the stomach, the inferior border, while the lesser omentum extends upward from the lesser curvature of the stomach, or the superior border. Therefore, the intestines are covered by the greater omentum, while the stomach remains exposed. The digestive system is a series of chambers or regions along a tube. Although each region differs significantly in form and function, the histological layers from the interior to the outer surface have the same 4 layers. Here we see the view of the open airway of the trachea and the collapsed tube of the esophagus behind it. Looking more closely at the esophagus, we can see the different layers encircling it. When you look at the segment of this tube, you can see the differences in the layers more clearly. The innermost layer is the mucosa, which is made of epithelial tissue. This is the layer that is in contact with the food. This layer is also the most variable from one region of the GI tract to another. In the esophagus, it serves to protect from abrasion of the incoming food. Think of chewing and swallowing tortilla chips. Then the epithelial tissue serves to secrete chemicals. Think of digestive enzymes in the stomach. And then in the intestines, it serves to absorb nutrients. The submucosa is made of many types of connective tissue, which contains blood vessels and nerves. The muscularis externa is made of 2 bands of muscles, 3 in the stomach actually. They are responsible for peristalsis or propulsion of food along the GI tract. The circular muscle wraps around the tube like a belt, while the outer longitudinal muscle extends up and down the length of the tube, like seeing the side of a log truck versus the back of a log truck. Finally, the outermost layer is the serosa, which is the visceral peritoneum, holding it onto the mesentery within the abdominal cavity. This is a view of the muscularis externa, where you can see more clearly the smooth muscle direction difference between the circular muscle wrapping around the tube and the blunt end of the longitudinal muscle coming straight out of the image towards you. Lastly, you can see the connective tissue of the serosa. The layers of the esophagus begin with the mucosa surrounding the lumen or space where food is. The mucosa's stratified squamous epithelial lining touches the food and is used for protection against the abrasion and scratching from the food we swallow. Outside that is the submucosa, followed by the circular muscle wrapping around the tube, and then finally the longitudinal muscle extending the length of the esophagus from the neck to the stomach. The mucosa of the stomach is a thick band of crevices lined with simple columnar epithelial cells that can't be seen in this magnification. You can see the distinctive muscularis mucosa at the bottom. The submucosa is just a region of connective tissue. Then the oblique muscle, which is the extra layer of muscle found in the stomach because of its larger pouch shape rather than a tube, followed by the circular muscle layer and a portion of the thick outer longitudinal muscle. The small intestine has 3 segments, the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Each segment is slightly different from each other. While maintaining the 4 layers, the mucosa contains the finger-like projections called villi, which are lined with simple columnar epithelial tissue. This region absorbs nutrients as well as allows for digestion in the lumen by several secretions from the gallbladder and pancreas discussed in the digestion section. The submucosa of the duodenum specifically has some unique glands called Brunner's glands, which neutralize the acid in the lumen since the food just came from the highly acidic stomach. Then the 2 layers of the muscularis externa are the circular and longitudinal muscle layers. As always, the serosa lines the outside. The region of the small intestine where most absorption of food occurs is the jejunum. It has longer villi, which are also lined with simple columnar epithelial tissue, so there is more surface area for absorption to take place. The submucosa wraps that, then the muscularis externa with the circular and longitudinal muscle layers, finally the outer serosa layer. The ileum of the small intestine has a lot of immune system nodules not pictured here. Absorption can still take place. However, most of the food to be absorbed is gone by the time it gets here unless it is Thanksgiving and you ate a lot. The mucosa of the colon is a thick band without distinctive villi. There are many goblet cells indicated by the many white circles embedded within the epithelial mucus layer. The submucosa contains a lot of connective tissue and blood vessels. The muscularis externa in the colon is thinner than other regions but still has a circular and longitudinal layer.